What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Reality. I'm your host, Cole, and today's episode is all going to be about prioritizing our time. Now, this podcast came about after I realized just how much time I was wasting scrolling Instagram, TikTok, checking people's stories on Snapchat. It really is just a waste of time. And I never realized how much I was wasting until I looked up and it was an hour, sometimes 2-3 hours scrolling on TikTok. And this doom scrolling has hindered me from growing other projects, other side projects. So today we're going to be talking about how to prioritize our time, how do we stop wasting it on endless doom scrolling, and how we can actually start putting our time for things that actually start moving us forward. So let's get into it. All right, what's up? Thanks again for coming back for another episode of Let's Talk Reality. And you'll see this is another video podcast. Last week, once again, I'm sorry, I had technical difficulties, and it turned out that I just needed a few updates, and thankfully I had the storage to do so. So I'm right back at it with another episode. Go Reds! The MLB is a fun time right now. The Cincinnati Reds are just not having it. But in this first section, I wanted to touch on one of the more important topics here, and that's really how doom scrolling kind of hijacks our sense of time. And I think it all starts with this cycle that we think that it's, for me, I was replacing it with my TV time, right? So I'd wake up from, sleep from the night before, I'd scroll, look up, I would go to work, come back, finish work, scroll, and then go to sleep. I don't do this much as I don't do this as much as I used to, but I still feel myself slowing in productivity when I do pick up the phone with the TikTok, with the Instagram, with the Snapchat. And it's because it's this illusion of stimulation. Like, yeah, I don't watch TV anymore, but that doesn't mean when I would watch a 30-minute show on TV, I don't need to replace that with 2 hours and 30 minutes worth of TikTok doom scrolling. This is the illusion. And what makes it so hard for, comparing it to television and then comparing it to doom scrolling, it's just TV, like you have to change the channel. With doom scrolling, you're just flipping your wrist or your thumb every other 30 seconds. And you don't really realize how much time you're spending on these apps unless you've got, now I use the screen time timer to where I'm only allowing myself 1 hour a day, Monday through Thursday. Fridays, I don't care too much, but Monday through Thursday, Saturday, Sunday of just, social media time. So I'm not really interacting too much. But before the screen time, I was like, I didn't really know how much time I was spending on these apps. Now, you all know me. I always like to bring a couple stats here. And one of the stats that I have in my show notes says that the average person spends over 2.5 hours a day on social media, which adds up to more than a full 38 days a year just wasted scrolling. Now, that's average. So it's not like it's the median. It's just taking into account those people who spend, I don't know, maybe they're streaming or something and they're actually spending 13, 14 hours a day. But still, I can easily find myself spending an hour on socials. Heck, I've already done it today, just recording this because I didn't feel like getting up out of bed just yet. This is the danger. This is extremely dangerous. One, because, it's a waste of time. But then also, I've noticed that the more doom scrolling that I do, the more anxious I am, the more clouded my mind is. And that's centered around, maybe I didn't need to see a video on there that was on the app, or maybe I'm just seeing too much and I can't think for myself. For a creative, this is the worst part because I'll get into this later, but you start comparing so many things against your craft, whether it be music, podcasting, if you're actually creating art, that you kind of second guess some of the things that you're really good at because other people are doing something different. These are just a few examples on how this, never ending scroll can hijack our time and sense of reality in our 20s. But this first section is really just about realizing how much time that we're spending on these apps. And when you realize how much time that you're spending, you're able to start, asking yourself the question, okay, if I spent 45 minutes on TikTok, how could I have repurposed that 45 minutes to an hour just wasting my time? I kid you not, there is a bottom to your For You page on TikTok that people think I'm just jokingly saying that it actually happens, but it's real. It's a real thing. I made it there one time, and that was like maybe 4 or 5 hours of scrolling on TikTok. Now, this was a few years ago, so I haven't been that bad, but I think that if I didn't have the screen time and like the timer on my phone, I probably would be right back there if I didn't do anything to help mitigate the wasting of time. But it's all about like when you start to realize how much time you're spending on the screen, you think about like what could I have done with all these hours? And that leads me to my second section about reclaiming your focus, recognizing the difference between like consuming endless, mindless content and actually creating it. Because I'll be honest, some days I do spend a lot of time on TikTok because I'm making reels, I'm making podcasts. I like to see what other, popular podcasts are doing so I can ensure that, I'm putting some good content out there that I believe is going to eventually or, it's going to stick with the viewers and listeners. When that's useful, that's almost educational TikTok or educational Instagram reels. But there's other times where I'm just endlessly like consuming AI edited videos of Sasquatch preaching to the choir. Like, you don't need to see these types of videos. You don't need to be wasting your time consuming this type of content when you could be building a business. You could be starting a side hustle. If you're creative, you could be exposing yourself to the world with all of your crafts or all your creative endeavors. So there's many opportunities that you could be repurposing this time for something that's going to benefit you. For me, it's about replacing the idle scrolling with intentional action. If I find myself on TikTok and, I'm like, what am I doing? And I'm not using it for an actual benefit, I'll repurpose that time to go journal. I'll try to go make up some new content for the podcast show here. I'm also thinking about potential businesses or side hustles that I can, outsource to my community. These minutes are what give me time back in my life that I can actually think for myself in a clear state of mind and move myself forward. I always say this, always, always, always. The 20s are the time for growth. And right now is the perfect time to be selfish. And you don't want to be selfish wasting your time on stupid apps. You want to be selfish building brands, building businesses, building a personal brand. This is what you need to be doing. So figure it out, right? Just sit down with yourself, have that hard conversation with yourself and ask yourself, do I really need another app? Do I really need another social media app? Do I need to just sit here and scroll Facebook Marketplace for 4 hours and buy nothing? Do I need to go on a rabbit hole deep dive on YouTube about whether or not Bigfoot is real? No, let me answer that for you. The answer is no, you don't. And like I said, if you have this hard conversation with yourself and you feel like you can't help hold yourself accountable, there's so many apps on your phone. I mean, I use the iPhone. I'm sure Android has the same thing, but you can create, limits to your apps. You can say for a specific app, you can go on there and you can just say, hey, I want to spend an hour total across TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram each day on this certain day. And it'll prompt you and it'll tell you, it'll lock the app once you've hit that hour. But you just got to hold yourself accountable and not like, click that remind me in 15 minutes or ignore and limit for today, unless you've got time to kill. But most of the time, I've got time to grow. And I'm not trying to sit here and waste my 20s scrolling on apps and, posting stupid stories on Instagram. That's just me. Maybe it's you. I don't know. I don't know. But you're listening. And so I feel like you're interested in, being a little bit more productive in your life. So that's that. Another point that I want to bring up is the fact that I find that when I'm most bored is when I have the best opportunity for new ideas. When I have nothing going for myself, right? I'm just chilling on the couch, staring at the wall. The environment is empty, but my brain has ample time and ample energy to like go on these loopholes around, okay, this is a cool podcast topic. How would I incorporate this into the podcast? How would I, do this for music? This is a cool album, title. This is some awesome cover art. What other side hustles could I do? How else can I branch out? Like I just said, these are the times that the boredom strikes, but it opens up your mind and gives space in your mind to generate new ideas. It's like your own little chat GPT, but it's personalized to your life. And that's just the way it should be. You shouldn't be comparing yourself to others on socials or having a depressive mood because you saw something inappropriate or you saw something strikingly uh, nasty on socials that just ruins your entire week or mood for the day. Just let that sink in for a little bit. And when you start saying no to the scroll, I feel like you like kind of start saying yes to everything that will help you build, which leads me into my third section, and that's the benefits. Like I'm just mentioning, like your brain is open, but you gain a lot more than just open space and open mind when you prioritize your time. First, you're just more clear. I feel like whether you're at work or you're just at home in personal life, you have a lot more clarity. I feel like I'm thinking a lot straighter than what I used to because my mind isn't filled with a bunch of TikTok memes or a bunch of, Gen Z sayings. I don't feel like I'm talking like in the whatever slang this week is. I'm not saying 6, 7 every other sentence. So my brain is a lot more clear. I mentioned it for the creatives. This is awesome because it gives you an opportunity to generate new ideas and you're just honing in on your craft even more. And then also, I feel like when you're not just scrolling on your phone, you're more than likely, if you don't isolate yourself, you're spending time with people and you're having those real world connections that a lot of us crave, but we don't really have the energy to go do so because our brains are just so tired from scrolling all day. Ever since I've started using the screen time, ever since I've just become a little bit more aware on how much I'm using the social apps or just my phone in general, I'm having a lot more real connection with people and my social life is booming. It's awesome. I love it. And you should love it for yourself too by just limiting your screen time. That's it. And I'm using all this time for the stuff that like actually matters in my life. I said this, I think, on my last podcast or the podcast before. It's like social media is just, we all know it's just a superficial highlight reel that we think is true, but you're really just seeing the best of the best in people's lives, and it's not a real clear depiction of reality and what that person's reality is. Once you remove yourself from that, you're just even better suited to live in your own little world and you repurpose your time to spend with family, with friends, with your business that you're growing. There's just so many benefits, like your goals, your hobbies, or just simply just time to relax by yourself. Not to mention like the so many times where I feel like I've had to be pressed for finishing a podcast episode, or I'm dropping a new album, or I'm making a new album for someone, and I just don't have the time because I never thought I had the time because I was just always so focused on, oh well, I got to see what this person's up to on Snap, or I got to see what they're doing on TikTok, or I got to scroll on Instagram, post on Instagram, and make sure I get so many X amount of likes. That's just it just makes no sense to me. And I'm so happy that I'm not contained by the ropes and handcuffs of these social media apps because they are not real. And let me be clear, it's not about quitting social media. It's just about controlling the amount of time that you spend on it, what you're viewing, and ensuring that you're using the repurposed time for stuff that's actually going to benefit you in the long run, that's actually going to plant the seeds now for the fruit and flowers of your future. Anyways, that's all I've got for you today. I appreciate you for listening, and I'll see you in the recap. All right, so let's just wrap it up here. I think that the main message from this podcast is that time is the one thing that we never get it back. It's the most valuable, precious item, precious, intangible object in life, and we should not be wasting it. But a lot of us do. We tend to give away our time to something that gives us nothing real in life back. That's like the social apps. So just remember that your 20s are the time to build, not just scroll. You should prioritize your peace, your growth, and just being present in the moment, not present in the algorithms. There's nothing good that comes from this. If this episode struck home with you, or you know someone who needs to hear this, please, please, please feel free to share it with them. And as always, I appreciate you for listening. I'm dropping episodes weekly. I'm almost to 50, and I'm pretty excited because I think 50 and 100 are going to be some awesome milestones for this podcast. And I'm so lucky to have you along for the ride. And lastly, just know that I'm on socials. Let's Talk Reality is on wherever you get your podcasts, but we're also on Instagram at Let's Talk Reality Pod and TikTok at Let's Talk Reality Pod. So follow us there for more content and behind the scenes action. Until next week, peace out.